Dear colleagues, as announced at the beginning of this part session, our agenda of this week is dominated by the situation in Ukraine. Today, we are starting our day with the most pressing debate on EU-Russia relations, European security and Russia's military threat against Ukraine amidst intense international diplomatic exchanges to de-escalate the situation. I am pleased to welcome the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, who are with us to discuss the latest developments on the ground in the wider context of European security and EU-Russia relations. Welcome to the plenary. On behalf of the European Parliament, we have repeatedly expressed solidarity with the people of Ukraine as they continue to face the uncertainty of the past weeks and fear of Russian military aggression. What we are witnessing here is also a threat to peace in Europe. I want to recall that in September last year, the European Parliament adopted a resolution that called for containing Russia's influence in the EU and its eastern neighbourhood. And in December last year, we also adopted a resolution where we criticised the actions of the Russian authorities and underlined our preparedness to agree swiftly on further joint action, including sanctions. Today, just after this debate, we will vote on granting €1.2 billion of macro-financial assistance to Ukraine, and I would like to thank the European Commission for this timely proposal to support Ukraine's financial stability and resilience in the current difficult circumstances. Also later today, the Conference of Presidents will discuss the declaration on the situation in Ukraine. I would like to stress that while we urge for a de-escalation of the current tension between Ukraine and Russia, this Parliament stands ready to support swift, forceful and concrete action in coordination with other European institutions. The Union's unity and close cooperation with our partners are key for the European Union to play a strong role on the international stage and to contribute to peace and security. We would be interested to know how lessons learned from the current situation will be reflected also in the works on the future strategic compass for the European Union. Finally, I would like to thank you, President Michel, President von der Leyen and High Representative Borrell for your engagement in the intense consultation on identifying ways to address the situation at the EU's eastern borders and your efforts to uphold fundamental principles of the existing European security architecture. So without further delay, I would like to give the floor to the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, for your statement.
Madam President of the European Parliament, Madam President of the Commission, dear High Representative, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, this week is expected to be an important geopolitical week for the European Union. We will hold our joint summit with the African Union. Some 80 delegations of African and European leaders are arriving in Brussels to negotiate a strategic partnership between our two continents. Yet, the extremely serious situation in Eastern Europe has crept into all our agendas. And allow me to lay out the range of actions taken by the EU to deal with this crisis in very close coordination with our allies. And let me explain how the European Council will approach our future decisions, whether in the short or longer term. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia has undertaken an unprecedented military escalation against Ukraine. The Russian authorities have repeatedly said they have no aggressive intentions towards this sovereign country, and this despite already annexing part of Ukrainian territory, Crimea, in 2014, and constantly undermining Ukraine's sovereignty, especially in eastern Ukraine. Encircling a country with an extraordinary deployment of military forces, never seen before, can only be seen as aggressive and threatening behavior. This escalation not only endangers the stability and integrity of Ukraine, it also threatens peace and security in Europe and the rules-based international system. We, the EU, NATO allies, member states, are working together at every level on a daily basis, consulting politically and acting together. We are working at a level of intensity and quality that we have not seen for years. Our unity is stronger than ever. And we have adopted a strong and clear strategy in 3 areas. First, diplomacy. We have chosen to give every opportunity to the diplomatic routes. European and American leaders have undertaken countless diplomatic initiatives and missions. We have activated negotiating platforms for dialogue with Russia, such as NATO, the OSCE, or the Normandy format. And I would like to commend Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron for their important role. We have never stopped giving priority to diplomatic channels, even when these efforts did not seem to produce immediate, tangible results. Yet, in the last 2 days, Russia has signaled that it may be open to diplomacy, and we urge Russia to take concrete and tangible steps towards de-escalation, because this is the condition for sincere political dialogue. We cannot eternally attempt diplomacy on one side, while the other side is amassing troops. Mesdames et messieurs, en addition à cet engagement diplomatique, nous travaillons sur le deuxième sujet, qui est la préparation des sanctions et des mesures restrictives pour le cas où elles devraient être nécessaires. Le Conseil européen, au mois de décembre, a eu l'occasion avec clarté de fixer le cadre politique des 27 chefs d'État et de gouvernement. Nous considérons que s'il devait y avoir une agression militaire contre l'Ukraine, le coût pour la Russie devrait être sévère, les conséquences devraient être massives. Mais nous devons aussi être francs les uns par rapport aux autres. Cela veut dire que les conséquences pour nous, Européens, seraient lourdes également, et le moment venu, si ce était nécessaire, nous devrions être prêts à assumer cette responsabilité. Je remercie le travail préparatoire qui est mené par le haut représentant et par la Commission, le Conseil européen et les États membres, si c'était nécessaire, et le moment venu, auront l'occasion de se prononcer et de prendre les décisions politiques sur ce sujet, et cela en étroite coopération, en étroite coordination avec l'ensemble de nos partenaires et de nos alliés. Enfin, mesdames et messieurs, il est un troisième point qui me paraît essentiel. C'est le point qui touche directement au soutien à l'Ukraine, au soutien au peuple ukrainien. Bien sûr, ce soutien, il doit être, comme il l'est depuis longtemps, politique. Nous affirmons la souveraineté et l'intégrité territoriale de l'Ukraine, et nous le répétons. Et nous reconnaissons cette aspiration européenne, cette aspiration euro-atlantique de l'Ukraine également. Ce soutien, il est aussi financier, parce que les circonstances, on le mesure bien, provoquent d'ores et déjà un dommage significatif, quotidien, pour le système économique ukrainien, et nous saluons la décision rapide annoncée par la Commission, 1,2 milliard mobilisés sur le terrain de l'aide macrofinancière. Je pense que nous allons devoir aller au-delà de cela avec l'ensemble de nos alliés et de nos partenaires. C'est pourquoi je veux lancer ici cette proposition d'initiative de mettre en place, en étroite coopération avec l'Ukraine et l'Union européenne, une conférence des donateurs afin de soutenir la robustesse économique de l'Ukraine pour laquelle cette menace brutale a été engagée, et de soutenir aussi l'agenda de réforme tellement important pour ce pays. Enfin, mesdames et messieurs, je voudrais clôturer ces quelques mots par deux messages. Et le premier message solennel, je veux l'adresser au peuple ukrainien. En 2014, le peuple ukrainien, fier et libre, à Maïdan, dans les sacrifices qui ont accompagné ce moment de cette histoire, de leur histoire, de notre histoire, a fait le choix de la liberté, a fait le choix de la démocratie libérale, a fait le choix de l'état de droit. L'Union européenne, depuis ce moment, n'a cessé de soutenir et d'accompagner ce choix libre et souverain du peuple ukrainien. Et je veux affirmer avec solennité que l'Union européenne restera du côté de l'Ukraine. L'Union européenne ne laissera pas tomber le peuple ukrainien. Mesdames et messieurs, le deuxième message, je souhaite l'adresser à la Russie et à ses dirigeants. Le choix aujourd'hui est celui entre la guerre et les sacrifices tragiques qui l'accompagnent, ou alors le courage de l'engagement politique, le courage de la négociation diplomatique. Très clairement, l'Union européenne est pour le choix de la diplomatie et pour le choix de la négociation. Nous saurons faire preuve de ce courage, nous saurons aussi faire preuve de la fermeté qui serait nécessaire si un autre choix devrait être posé. Je pense à ce courage de la négociation pour garantir des solutions durables afin de garantir la stabilité et la sécurité mutuelle. C'est le choix que nous devons au peuple d'Europe, c'est le choix que les dirigeants russes doivent au peuple russe. Mesdames et messieurs, dans quelques heures, les 27 dirigeants européens seront réunis à Bruxelles pour ce sommet avec l'Afrique. Je ne doute pas que nous aurons l'occasion d'exprimer la fermeté, l'unité et la force de l'Europe pour porter nos valeurs et pour rester à côté du peuple ukrainien. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, President Michel. I give the floor now to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for her statement.
Thank you, Madam President, President Charles Michel, High Representative Josep Borrell, honourable members. The very reason why our Union was created is to put an end to all European wars. And so it is particularly painful for me to address you today as we face the largest build-up of troops on European soil since the darkest days of the Cold War. The people of Ukraine are bravely trying to get on with their lives, but many of them keep emergency bags by their front doors with basic clothes and important documents in case that they have to rush away from home. Others have stockpiled food cans to prepare for the worst. Some have even set up shelters in their basements. These are not stories from the 1940s. This is Europe in 2022. And this is happening because of a deliberate policy of the Russian leadership. Ukraine is a sovereign country. It is making its own choices about its own future. But the Kremlin doesn't like this, and so it threatens war. And this is the essence of the current escalation. This is something we simply cannot accept. I think diplomacy has not yet spoken its last words, and we saw signs of hope yesterday, but now deeds have to follow those words. In the last 7 years, Ukraine has suffered from the Kremlin's constant aggression. But despite that heavy burden they have, Ukraine has come such a long way. It has taken important steps to fight corruption. It has rebuilt its infrastructure. It has created new jobs for its talented youth. And our union has accompanied them, putting together the largest support package in our history. Of course, the people of Ukraine know that their democracy still has some flaws and issues to deal with it. But Ukraine today is a sovereign, more free, more strong country than in 2014, and this is precisely why the Kremlin is threatening it again. We stand firm with Ukraine. The idea that the Kremlin should decide what Ukrainians can or cannot desire, we simply cannot accept. And the idea of spheres of influence are ghosts of the last century. This crisis is about Ukraine, yes, but it is also about much, much more. It is also about what it means to be a sovereign, independent, and free country in the 21st century. It is about everyone's right to live free from fear. And it's about every country's right to determine its own future. And this is the message that our union has to send to the Kremlin. Like everyone in this room, I truly hope that the Kremlin will decide not to unleash further violence in Europe. Yesterday, Russia was certainly sending conflicting signals. On the one hand, authorities announced Russian troop pullbacks. On the other hand, the Duma votes for the formal recognition of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent republics. But I still strongly believe in diplomacy. It is good to hear yesterday's commitment to the Minsk agreement. President Macron and Chancellor Scholz have traveled to Kiev and Moscow. Several others are also speaking to both sides. I'm constantly exchanging with all of them, as well as President Biden, Prime Minister Trudeau, Prime Minister Johnson. I must really say the transatlantic community has for a long time not been so united. Let me just mention one recent episode. Earlier this month, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov wrote 36 letters to each and every member state of the European Union and NATO ally with a series of demands. He received 2 letters in response. One from Josep Borrell on the behalf of the European Union and one from Jens Stoltenberg on behalf of NATO. The European Union and its transatlantic partners are united in this crisis. And our call to Russia is crystal clear. Do not choose war. A path of cooperation between Russia and us is still possible. But let's stay vigilant. Despite yesterday's news, NATO has not yet seen signs of any Russian troop reduction. And should the Kremlin choose violence against Ukraine, our response will be strong and united. The European Commission and the EAS have been working closely with all member states to prepare a robust and comprehensive package of potential sanctions. And we have worked in very close coordination with our friends from the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada. And let me say that in these weeks, we have built a unity of purpose that is truly remarkable, both within the European Union and with our partners. In case of a Russian aggression, Europe's reaction will be swift and robust. And we're not just talking about freezing assets and banning travel for Russian individuals. Russia's strategic interest is to diversify its economy, its one-sided economy, and to close its current gaps. But for this, they need technologies in which we have a global leadership, high-tech components of which Russia is almost entirely dependent on us. So our sanctions can bite very hard, and the Kremlin knows this as well. And on another topic, we are also ready. In case that the Russian leadership decides to weaponize the energy issue. You know, we see at a time of high demand that Gazprom is restricting its gas supplies to Europe. We see a 10-year low in storage by Gazprom. We see no sales on the spot market. This is a strange behavior for a company that in times of skyrocketing demand and prices, they are not trying to maximize their profits. And this behavior has already damaged Russia's credibility as a reliable energy supplier. We are since weeks in talks with a number of countries that are ready to step up their exports of liquefied natural gas to the European Union. And this resulted now in January in record deliveries of LNG gas, more than 120 vessels, that is the equivalent of 10 billion cubic meters of LNG. And on top, we've done our homework. Since the annexation of Crimea, we have increased the number of LNG terminals in the European Union. We have reinforced our pan-European pipeline and electricity interconnector network. And the good part in this story is that these investments in infrastructure we have done will in future be the backbone for the possibility to supply with green hydrogen. So they are future-proof. And now we have, during the last weeks, looked into all possible disruption scenarios in case Russia decides to partially or completely disrupt gas supplies to the European Union. And I can say today that our models show, with all the measures we have taken, that we are now on the safe side for this winter. On top of this, we have also developed with a number of member states a new set of emergency measures which we could trigger in case of complete disruptions. But one of the main lessons we have already learned from this crisis, honourable members, is that we must diversify our energy sources and we must get rid of the dependency of Russian gas. We must heavily invest in renewables. Our alternative are renewables, because though renewables are clean and good for the climate, but they are also homegrown and good for our independence. That's where our future lies. Honourable members, this is a crisis that has been created by Moscow. We have not chosen confrontation. We are hoping for the best, but we are prepared for the worst. We now have two distinct futures ahead of us. In one, the Kremlin decides to wage war against Ukraine with massive human costs, something we thought we had left behind after the tragedies of the 20th century. Moscow's relation with us would be severely damaged. Tough sanctions would kick in with dire consequences on the Russian economy and its prospect of modernization. But another future is possible, a future in which Russia and Europe cooperate on their shared interests, a future where free countries work together in peace, a future of prosperity built on the respect of the fundamental principles that are enshrined in the UN Charter and in the European security architecture since the Helsinki Final Act. This is my aspiration, and I'm sure the Russian people share this aspiration too. It's now up to the Kremlin to decide. But whatever path they decide to take, we will stand our ground. Europe will be united on the side of Ukraine, on the side of peace, and on the side of Europe's people. Long live Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President von der Leyen. I invite now High Representative Josep Borrell to take the floor.
Señora Presidenta del Parlamento Europeo, señor Presidente del Consejo Europeo, señora Presidenta de la Comisión, señoras y señores diputados y diputadas. Lo que ocurra en Ucrania marcará el futuro de la humanidad. Todos los seres humanos deberían estar preocupados por lo que allí ocurra, porque si de nuevo se impone la ley del más fuerte y un país puede amenazar a otro y puede atacarlo y desagregarlo territorialmente, echaremos marcha atrás en la historia. El gran éxito de la Unión Europea es precisamente el haber renunciado a la guerra como forma de resolver los conflictos. Y por eso tenemos que estar con Ucrania, tratando de prevenir una guerra en nuestras fronteras. Y eso forma parte fundamental de lo que llamamos política común de seguridad y defensa, que tengo el honor de intentar desarrollar. Y la presencia aquí hoy en este Pleno de las instituciones de la Unión, Consejo Europeo con su presidente, la Comisión Europea con su presidenta y el Consejo, al que tengo el honor de representar y presidir sus formaciones de Asuntos Exteriores y de Defensa, marca la unidad europea frente a la posible agresión de Rusia contra Ucrania. Y esta unidad se ha hecho más fuerte y patente en estos días. Y creo que es una de las grandes consecuencias positivas de esta crisis. Ha habido una aproximación común y todos los Estados europeos han respondido unánimemente a una respuesta que deberá concretarse en lo que llamamos sanciones o medidas coercitivas según el tratado. Sanciones que deberá aprobar el Consejo bajo la propuesta del alto representante y que habrán sido elaboradas con la inestimable cooperación de la Comisión Europea para medir cuáles son sus costes y sus consecuencias, y ciertamente bajo la dirección política del Consejo Europeo. Y eso ocurrirá si Rusia agrede a Ucrania. Pero déjeme que insista en el aspecto fundamental de nuestra Unión, que es la consecuencia más positiva de esta crisis. Una crisis que se ha basado en la amenaza a la integridad territorial de un Estado, una crisis que afecta a la estructura de seguridad en Europa, que no puede ser puesta en cuestión a través de amenazas, y una crisis que afecta al derecho de cada Estado soberano a escoger libremente sus estructuras de seguridad y sus relaciones internacionales. Allow me to talk about a little bit which has been the role of the European diplomacy in these events. It has been said that Europe was missing in action. We have heard that the European is missing in actions and things are happening without our presence, without our participation, led by the United States, who are negotiating over our head. I think that we had to respond to this criticism, which seems at all unfounded, by several reasons. First, because the member states of the Union have consistently debating the issue of security in Europe and Ukraine, and we have achieved a remarkable unity. Because several member states, France and Germany, have taken a number of political initiatives to promote a peaceful settlement of the crisis, and these initiatives have been carried in coherence with the positions of the Union and in conditions of great transparency. And third, because Russia deliberately tried to ignore the existence of the European Union by sending letters only to the United States and NATO in December, considering that we are completely irrelevant and has nothing to say about the security issues in Europe. For Moscow, the security in Europe is being defined in Washington. Later, when they will notice that despite this dismissive attitude, nothing was going on, Minister Lavrov finally decided to send a letter to the 27 member states that he had ignored until now. Why such a U-turn on the Russian position? For two reasons. First, because they realized that the European front was not cracked and the Atlantic solidarity was very strong. So he tried a maneuver which was to send letters to the 27 member states, hoping to have 27 different answers. But in this case, Mr. Lavrov didn't succeed, because we sent him a single letter, saving him the time to read 27 letters, all of them equal. Just one letter representing the position of the European Union on behalf of the 27 member states. And this is a good example of how we Europeans we can work together, and together with our allies, with the US and other like-minded countries, with which we have had a continuous and very much positive coordination. So we have been present, participating on the negotiations, if we can call them negotiations, at least conversations, until now. So what we can envisage next? Well, we don't know. Nobody knows. There are encouraging signs, but also very much worrisome events, like the vote in the Duma asking Putin to recognize the independence of the two, let's say, republics in the Donbass. We don't know what Putin is going to do, but what is clear is that we have to continue offering both things at the same time. The will to negotiate, be ready to participate in talks because, yes, Russia has also security concerns that has to be taken into consideration, and on the other hand, to prepare our capacity to respond, our dissuasion tools, sanctions, as the President of the Commission and the President of the Council have been referring to. On that, we have been working, and on that, we are ready to act. But most of all, we are ready to continue negotiations, talk, in order to look for a diplomatic solution to the worst crisis that Europe is living since the end of the Cold War. And I repeat again, this crisis not only affects Ukrainians, not only the Europeans, it affects the direction of humankind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the High Representative.